Let me welcome you also to the session, The Web Women Want, How Does Tech Fuel the Feminist Discourse? Before we start the panel discussion, I'd like to just quickly give a quick insight on how I perceive the feminist online discourse. In Germany, we had some I think, major processes with the hashtag MeToo, which you also know, and the hashtag Aufschrei. And to my mind, that has really shaped the discourse. And when we were preparing this panel together with the colleagues, we were wondering, or we were thinking, this had an impact here in Europe. Still, I believe it is a very exclusive and very wide discourse. And I was wondering, is there also something similar, for example, in India or in Ghana? And is there, or is this really something particularly that we find super interesting, or don't we just simply don't know about it? Japleen, yeah, maybe.
Thank you, Katrin. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Japleen from India, and I run a feminist platform called feminismindia.com. It's an online media platform. Coming to your question, Katrin, as we know, Me Too was started by Tarana Burke 10 years back, but none of us knew about it then, right? Like, how many of us knew about Me Too 10 years back? Okay, even I didn't know about it. So Me Too went global for various reasons. It was started in Hollywood, and because it was a movement that was started by celebrity stars, against celebrity stars, it got a lot of media coverage. It was a very important movement which had a global impact all over the world, where similar movements then started in other parts of the country. As Katrin also mentioned, Aufschrei was one of them in Germany. But I think, and in India also there was a lot of impact, but what I would like to say here is that we shouldn't take Me Too as a template where, all the movements started just last year, because there have been a lot of movements in India and in other parts of the country which have been talking about sexual violence, sexual harassment. And if I may show a slide that I've put in the...
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, we can do this now, sure, yeah.
It just ties in with, So this is a picture from, and I'm on the right side. This is a picture from a movement, from a protest march that I and a couple of my colleagues from all over India, we were about 30 organizations and individuals who organized a march called I Will Go Out. It was a march against sexual harassment to reclaim safe public spaces for women. And it was a march that was organized on Jan 21st, 2017, which was at the same time of the Women's March in the US. A lot of people asked us, is this a India chapter of the Women's March? And we were very clear, and we wanted to emphasize that although Women's March in the US or in other parts of the world could be important for them, for us, this march was different and important because it had local context. So I think what I'm trying to say here is Me Too was a movement that was started in one part of the country, but it may or may not have local context in other parts of the world, because not everybody would have that kind of access to, let's say, a New York Times article and a huge social media following where they can call out a person, as big and important as Harvey Weinstein and have the same kind of impact. But there are many smaller movements which are not known to the bigger world because they are local and regional movements.
Mm-hmm. One question here when it comes to the march. I was doing an internship some 15 years ago at Amnesty International Australia. And we were also organizing, forming part of something which seems to be a bit similar. It's called Reclaim the Streets. And it was also some feminist movement where we wanted to go out on the streets and say, this is also our sphere, right? We are not afraid. I found out later on that, in particularly that night, a lot of women got raped because they were outside in the streets and feeling really free and feeling safe, which they indeed weren't. So talking about sexual harassment and also discrimination against in India, do you have experienced something similar when organizing this march?
That's a very good point. When we were organizing this march, we had to keep this in consideration that although we are demanding safe streets for women, but that's not what we have right now. So what we are demanding is an ideal situation, but we don't have it. So we had to change the timings of the march. We earlier thought that we would keep it to a midnight march where we start at 10 and end maybe at 1 a.m. But that was not possible because we had a lot of young women, especially students, college students, and in India you have curfews in hostels at universities. So that's the irony that this march was started at 5 p.m. in the evening instead of 10 p.m. in the night because we couldn't assure safety of the women who were participating with us as organizers. And I mean, we were demanding for something, but it's also important to be realistic and say, will we be safe if we go out at 10 p.m. instead of going at 5 p.m.?
Yeah. Maybe let's just now have a quick look at the tech side of life and how digital tools especially can actually help to advocate for our political and economic and social rights. And the past years, we've seen a lot of tools, apps, platforms, and so on and so forth. And I'd like to invite you to tell us a bit about some practical examples that you brought with you. And maybe, Japleen, do you want to start?
Thank you. I will start with the same picture behind me. As I said, this was a protest march that was organized in response to a mass molestation case that happened on New Year's Eve in India, in the city of Bangalore, that's in the south of India, on 31st December 2016. So the news came out on the 1st of January 2017, and within 15 days, a bunch of women who did not know each other personally and still do not know, a lot of them still do not know each other personally, but came together online. First, it was like one person had a idea that, we need to take back the streets. She contacted somebody she knew, and just like a domino effect, everybody just contacted the feminist activists that they knew in their cities, and we all came together, made a WhatsApp group and Facebook Messenger groups, chatted online, discussed how we are going to do this. This was a multi-city march. It was carried out in more than 30 cities in India at the same time on the same day. I was responsible with my colleague who's standing next to me for the Delhi protest, and then there were other protests in other cities. So for us, this was a really big moment where we were a bunch of young women who did not know each other but came together for a common cause, used basic digital tools like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Google Hangout to discuss, organize, do all logistics, get police permissions. You have to get police permissions when you are organizing a protest in India. Everything was done online without knowing each other, and we had a successful march. It was covered widely by national and international media. So I think that would be one example of how we used digital tools. I'll talk about my platform maybe later.
Yeah, or even now, but because...
Move the slides.
Yes, we can do that for you.
One more, please.
I think what I would really like to know is that, as I also try to start the conversation, is that very often we only tackle a very privileged elite. And I'd like to know, how do you actually get the marginalized women also in an online discourse engaged?
Okay, great. So starting from the very basic, this is a screenshot of my website, feminisminindia.com, and we advocate for intersectional feminism. Intersectional feminism means that we don't see women as a homogeneous category, where we look at oppressions via intersections. So as a Muslim woman, I'm not a Muslim woman, but I'm just giving an example. As a Muslim woman, you are oppressed by your religion and your gender. The same way, as a black woman, you are doubly oppressed because of the race and the gender. And that's how intersectional feminism works. It doesn't look at oppression in a one-street way, but looks at the intersections, the different kind of oppressions that a woman faces. And coming to your question of marginalized women, women. We are a crowdsourced platform where women from all strata of the society, of different class, caste in India, religion, gender, sexuality, write on our platform, on this platform, to raise their voices against the issues that they feel are very important or critical to them. We use affirmative action in our organization, where we prioritize voices of marginalized women. And another thing that, as a media platform, that we have implemented, and we got quite a bit of backlash for this, we implemented a no appropriation editorial policy. That means, as a non-Muslim woman, I do not have the right to opinionate on should Muslim women wear a hijab or not. I do not get to speak about it because it doesn't affect me personally at all. So let's say if we want to publish an article about should hijab be mandatory or should hijab be removed, like what France did, we all know about the Bikini Ban, disaster that it was. That is something that we as a platform are very, very specific, that only a Muslim woman can opinionate about it because it's her life and it affects her personally, as opposed to me, a non-Muslim woman, or a white woman, or any other woman for that matter. So this is how we push marginalized voices on our platform, by applying affirmative action.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. When you look at Japleen's slide here, I particularly want to stress the comic, exactly. And it says, can you read that?
Yeah, I can
Feminist
read that.
Cunt.
Yeah.
Get off the internet.
So this was a comic that we made for a campaign on online safety, and we wanted to show how online harassment affects women differently as opposed to men, especially when men are advocating for feminism as opposed to when women are advocating for feminism. Mm-hmm. So both the guy and the woman in this comic are saying the same thing, which is women face a lot of online abuse, but the man is receiving compliments because he's a woke bro, he's a feminist ally, but the woman is receiving abuses hurled at her because she is saying the truth. So we wanted to show the hypocrisy. This is something that happens very commonly in India, mm-hmm. where everywhere, I'm sure, where when women talk about the issues that they face, they receive abuses, but when men talk about it, they are believed much more than women.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to open the floor now for discussion. I hope we gave you a lot of food for thought. And are there any questions or statements?
Is there any strategy you know of, or strategies how women can face or react to online violence immediately? Is there anything that you could think of?
In India, there's also a lot of online violence, and at my organization, we specifically work on this topic. We have found out that more than 70% of the women, especially women who are outspoken activists, journalists, face online violence. I think beyond reporting it to the social media platform, or blocking or censoring your own account for some time just so that the trolls die down, the biggest support comes from within the community. It's very important because online harassment or online violence also affects you and your mental health. It affects you psychologically. So although it's not violence per se, that it's not physical violence, nobody's hurting you physically, nobody's coming out of the screen and hurting you physically, but it really affects you. So it's important to have emotional support, and it's important to have that community which offers you emotional support but also counters back to the trolls or to the abuse. So what we do in India or in my group is, when we see a person being harassed, we will jump on to that harassment. So that means that if she was it's like if the trolls were only targeting her, the target will be divided. So although we are making other women also vulnerable, but it's dividing the hate as opposed to just one person taking it. So it's more of a community thing, and it really works for us both in terms of combating the online violence and in terms of emotional support.